What's going on, guys? I'm TieFly85, and today we're going to be talking The Greatest Showman. Let's get started. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of MG Nights. Now, today we're going to be talking about The Greatest Showman starring Hugh Jackman. But before we go ahead and get started, I just want to let you guys know that there will be spoilers in this video, so if none of you have seen it, just know that you have been warned. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, let's just go ahead and start off with the storyline. I actually thoroughly enjoyed the story from start to finish. There were a few parts in there that I didn't necessarily care for overall, but let's go ahead and start with the very beginning, the first act of the movie. I loved how they ended up showing Hugh Jackman and Michelle Williams' character. We had P.T. Barnum and Charity, and how they showed basically how it was almost like a Romeo and Juliet style of where he was from the poor family, she was from the rich family, and then they came together. So I really did like that overall. And then the progression of them to when they got married and had children, and then how that kind of started the story overall. So I really did like that. And then when Hugh Jackman ends up losing his job, and he ends up coming up with an idea to get some money because he comes up with the idea for, you know, some kind of show, but he's not quite sure yet what it is. Well, he ends up going to the bank, and he has these merchant vessels that he basically could barter with for money, and the bank doesn't know, but they're actually in the bottom of the ocean, but they don't know that. So it's really interesting to see how it is that he ended up taking this really bad thing and turning it into something good. Because I feel like that's like kind of the underline of the movie overall. I don't know if any of you kind of took away that, but I felt that it was kind of like he was constantly always taking these really bad things and turning them into something more positive, or maybe somebody's helping him turn something more positive. But it always ends up being something very positive in the end. So I really did like that aspect of this movie. Now, overall, within the first act as well, I really loved how they set up him starting out the oddity show. And it's like P.T. Barnum's Oddities, and it just starts off with, you know, like stuffed animals and things from around the world and that kind of stuff, kind of like artifacts and oddities. And then the first person that we come across is a pickpocket who ended up pickpocketing from P.T. Barnum, who ends up becoming a part of his oddity show, and then ends up progressing into basically his right-hand man, who does kind of a lot of stuff for him behind the scenes. So it was really interesting to see the progression of that character overall within the movie. Basically, I loved how they progressed from showing his life up to that point, trying to get somewhere, into him finally, you know, starting this oddity show, into progressing into, like, you know, creating a ring, and then now he's going off to get all these characters. And I loved all the actors that they found to play these characters. The bearded lady, you had Dog Boy, you had like the tallest man in the world, the fattest man in the world, you had all of these characters, and all of the actors were so amazing and so good, and they sang really well. The entire cast, like, all harmonized perfectly. Now, obviously, I know that that's like, you know, Hollywood kind of stuff, but they actually do all sound really well together. Like, it's really amazing. Now, I like the fact that after he ends up getting all of these characters together and he actually starts the show, then P.T. Barnum kind of like comes into what I would call kind of like he runs into a brick wall where he can't really progress the show anymore, and so it's kind of like he's going to try to figure out a new way. Then comes Carlisle, who is played by Zac Efron, enters him, and he sees that he's kind of up there with the elites, and he's kind of like in those kind of circles where P.T. Barnum wants to be. So he ends up basically getting him to help him to basically navigate the elites, which is kind of a cool concept overall of how he ended up basically acquiring Carlisle for his show. But it's I do like Zac Efron's character overall. He's kind of almost like what I would say is kind of almost the voice of reason, sort of, in some instances in the movie. But I really did like Zac Efron's character overall. Like, it was really good, it was really well done. I thought he did a really good job. And we've already seen him in other musicals, like High School Musical, so we already know that he has a really good singing voice, so it was really good to see him again in another musical. Also, too, I would have to say one of the scenes that I know that my wife ended up loving, and was a really good scene overall, was the scene where Zac Efron, played by Carlisle, and you had Hugh Jackman or P.T. Barnum, they're drinking together in the bar while singing this song. And it's just a really good, interesting scene of them kind of having a little bit of a banter of talking about this show and becoming partners and stuff. And he was basically, I loved the part where they're both talking to each other in song, and then it ends up being where he's just like, well, we'll be partners. And then he basically said, more of an overcompensated apprentice. And so I really liked that line. I thought it was really funny, and like it just described their kind of relationship in that moment with that line, and I liked it. So it was just really good. Now, as it progressed from there, after they ended up having that bar scene, it ended up progressing where then Zac Efron's character ended up giving him more advice to be able to get up more into the leads and get more people into his show. So it was really interesting how that ended up happening. Well, Carlisle ends up helping them get into Buckingham Palace and to meet the Queen Elizabeth, and I really did enjoy that scene a lot, and I thought it was a very well added scene into the movie, because I didn't know that actually that had taken place, and that actually is a true story that actually did take place. So, but one of the interesting, most funniest scenes of that I thought was really good, I love how they go to meet the Queen in Buckingham Palace, and then all of the characters come in, and then the Queen sees the shortest man in the world and says, oh, I thought that you would be a lot shorter. And then without missing a beat, the guy says, you're not exactly reaching the top shelf yourself, Majesty. So it was just a really, like, witty, good, and then she just starts laughing. So it was just really funny. Like, I enjoyed it very much. Like, it was really good. Now, towards the end of the second act, after they've kind of got their show started, they're getting more of, like, everything progressing. There was what I would actually like to call is the evil songstress, who actually was Jenny Lind, who the character basically, who ended up, you know, becoming like this huge thing for PT, and he was able to like travel around, and it was kind of almost, the circus had become like a second thought to him because he was just so focused on Jenny Lind. So in that moment in the movie, I almost thought to myself, I'm just like, oh no, where are they headed with this? Like, is he gonna like, you know, divorce his wife, or something weird gonna happen here and he's gonna end up with Jenny Lind? And so I was really happy when I found out that it was completely opposite of that. And then I also wanted to just like, you know, reach through and strangle her because of the whole fact of her doing the like kiss scene where it was just like all public and craziness. So like, you know, it was kind of like a slap in the face almost, like for him. So it was really crazy, and you know, things just kind of went south from there. Like stuff just started going crazy after all of that went down. But in that whole time frame, I thought it was really interesting how they showed him progressing from how he used to have this really tight-knit relationship with all of the circus folk, and then, you know, he kind of starts letting go of that more. So like he locks him out of a party one day saying, you know, you got a show soon, you need to go. And then, you know, they end up, you know, making that really good song that I actually like, that This Is Me. And that song is just really good. Like, it's a really good, uplifting, powerful song, and I really did enjoy it a lot. I mean, another really powerful moment that happened during all of that commotion was then, you know, you had, like, the fight between the circus folk and the normal people, and then it just kind of progresses from there when, you know, then the theater ends up getting burned down because crazy stuff happens. So you just have a lot of crazy things that are happening right there towards, you know, the second into the third act of the movie, where it's like the evil kiss from the evil songstress, and then you have the circus burning down, and then you have, you know, the split up between, you know, Charity and P.T. Barnum because of the whole kiss thing, and just a whole crazy mess is happening there. But I really enjoyed how they ended up bringing that all back together in the end. So I definitely really did enjoy. There was a second bar scene where PT's kind of sobbing, drinking on his own, and everybody comes in to try to basically, you know, bring him back. He's just like, you know, it's not over, let's keep this going. There's that whole song that happens called Home Again, and it's just a really good, uplifting song. It's a great song. I highly recommend all of you definitely go check out the soundtrack for this movie because it's really good. I highly recommend you all check it out. I also really did enjoy the moment after the circus basically had burned down, and he's sitting on the front of the steps, and the guy who had been basically hounding him the entire time, that was the paper guy, ends up sitting down next to him, and they share this really nice intimate moment by him saying, you know, it was like a celebration of humanity. So basically the saying, I always admired you, you know, like, because you celebrate humanity. And so it was like this really nice genuine moment between them, and then he hands him the paper to show that he's been kissed by the evil songstress, and then stuff goes crazy. And then it shows, you know, I like how they end up progressing from that into him being kind of like a sob story in the bar, and then all of the circus folk come in and basically uplift him. And then there's a song that happens called Home Again that's a really good song. It's uplifting, it's very powerful, and I think it's I don't know if I necessarily would say it's my favorite song of the entire show, but it's a really good song. I'd highly recommend you all check it out. But I love how they end up motivating him to get basically off his butt to go, and then he ends up, you know, going back to win Charity, who is his wife, and they end up reconnecting on the sea, kind of almost where they first kind of met in the very beginning. So it's kind of like one of those things where it begins here, it ends here kind of thing, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So they're reconnected by the sea, and I really enjoyed it. There's a song that they sing called From Now On, and it's just a really good song about love and just, you know, staying together. And I really did enjoy it a lot. Now I love the fact that even at the very end, when everything seemed so low and everybody finally got uplifted back up, PT's up, you know, up on a high, Zac Efron's up on a high, like everybody's up here like super excited even though the circus burned down. And basically, you know, everybody comes to him and he has this idea. He's just all like, well, you know, there's some land down by the docks, like we could just throw up a tent. And then bam, you know, the tent circus was born. So it's a really interesting concept of how that actually all came about. So yeah, I just think it was really cool of how the tent circus was actually born. Honestly, thanks to all of those people burning down the original building is how the circus was born by the Big Top, you know what I mean? So kind of an interesting story overall there. It was kind of interesting towards the very, very end when Zac Efron and Hugh Jackman's character, P.T. Barnum and Carlisle, end up doing the whole 50-50 partner split. And so, I mean, that's really awesome. And then we got, you know, P.T. Barnum, Bailey, and Circus. So it just was a really interesting overall how that all became about. So it was really cool to see that aspect of it. Now to go ahead and wrap this up, I would have to say this movie was definitely a very well-made, family-friendly movie. It's definitely a movie that you could show to your entire family. The music is really good. Now, as far as a rating for this movie, I would definitely rate this movie really high up on the list. I would definitely say that you have to go see this movie in theaters. If it's still available to go see in theaters, I'd highly recommend you all go to theaters to check this movie out. It is such a good watch, and you will definitely not be disappointed. Alrighty guys, well that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys ended up liking this episode, please go ahead and slap that like button. Also too, if you're new here to the episode, welcome to the channel. Definitely go ahead and stick around by slapping that subscribe button and also hitting the bell notification so that way you don't miss out when new episodes do become available. Alrighty guys, well thank you so much for watching and definitely do appreciate your time, and always remember, stay awesome.
You should hear it all. I'm happy to make time for your feelings, but you have to admit I already do. Let's just break it down to you and me uptown, dancing all around.